started, there were two acts of Congress in 1950 and 1952 that authorized the construction of concentration camps that would presumably hold up to 250,000 people who would be rounded up in the event of hostilities with Russia on the grounds that their political sympathies could not be trusted, could not be known to a high degree of certainty. And that we know that later, after President Nixon was dealing with anti-war protests about the Vietnam War, that he contemplated mass arrests of anti-war demonstrators and had the government order and acquire 500,000 handcuffs for that purpose. And not just arrests, but internment so that they would be removed. So, to a certain degree, a strong federal government is a government that demonstrates its ability to act in an arbitrary way with its own citizens. And the Japanese internment was one of the first, maybe in fact the first major example of the federal government having that, demonstrating its capacity to do what its leaders deemed necessary. And the courts, while theoretically in a position to review, when they went to look at the cases, said this is a national security matter. We can't second guess national security questions. The federal government also extended itself into everybody's life in a very new way in 1941 with the passage of a law that initiated withholding tax. So for the first time, a portion of everybody's salary was deducted out of every check and sent to Washington. And people had to file returns. Previously, you weren't going to owe any tax if you owed, unless you owed over unless you had over $4,000 worth of income. You filed a tax return at the beginning of, at the end of the tax year, and then you sent in a check for what you owed. The tax rates were extended so that people who made much less money would also be liable for income tax, and a larger number of, basically the whole country, became used to filing tax returns and to sending money to the federal government. It's part of the revolution that takes place after 1940, in which the relationship of the economy and of the citizenry to the federal government transforms very quickly. It's a revolution that will affect every aspect of American life. The first people to protest this revolution were the conservatives, because they didn't want to see an end to segregation. They did not want to see full equality for citizens. They did not want to see the government have the ability to concentrate economic resources. And but at this point, the majority of the population was thankful to Roosevelt for having stabilized the situation during the Depression, and also likely, they may be puzzled, many people might have been puzzled by the war and what it was really all about, and I think the Rose book does a very good job in explaining that. They were basically patriotic and supportive of the government's efforts to win the war. So on Wednesday, we'll wrap up the story in terms of, okay, what did it mean for the United States to fight and prevail during World War II? And I'll see you then.